Commander Jake Morrison stood at the viewing deck of the human ship Starbound, watching the massive Zephyrian capital world grow larger on the screen. 3 years had passed since Earth discovered faster-than-light travel, and now humanity was finally ready to join the big players in space. The Galactic Council controlled trade, defense, and law across hundreds of worlds, and Earth desperately needed their protection and resources. Jake had been chosen to lead this mission because of his military background and diplomatic training. He was young for a commander at 32, but he had proven himself in the colonial wars near Jupiter. His crew trusted him, and that meant everything on a mission like this. "Commander, we're getting a signal from the Zephyrian fleet," called Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. She was Jake's tactical advisor and had spent months studying alien cultures. "They're ordering us to follow their escort ships to the capital." Through the viewing screen, Jake could see the Zephyrian vessels. They looked like floating crystals made of metal and energy. Beautiful but deadly. Each ship was twice the size of the Starbound, and probably carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Zephyrians had ruled this part of space for over 2,000 years, and their reputation as warriors was legendary. "Follow their lead, but keep our weapons powered down," Jake ordered. "We're here to make friends, not start a war." The Starbound followed the escort ships through a maze of defense platforms and massive space stations. Jake had never seen anything like the Zephyrian capital. Cities floated in space connected by bridges of pure energy. Ships moved in perfect formations like schools of fish. Everything spoke of order, power, and ancient strength. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh joined Jake at the viewing deck. He was an older man with graying hair who had helped design the Starbound's engines. "Impressive setup they have here," he said quietly. "Makes our biggest space stations look like toy boats." "That's the point," Jake replied. "They want us to feel small before we even start talking." The diplomatic meeting was held in a massive crystal palace that orbited the planet. Jake and his small team were escorted through hallways filled with strange art and weapons from conquered worlds. The message was clear. The Zephyrians had defeated many species before, and humanity was just another newcomer seeking their approval. The throne room was enormous, with a crystal ceiling that showed the stars above. Hundreds of Zephyrian nobles filled the space, their armor gleaming with inner light. They were tall and graceful, with pale skin and silver hair, but their eyes held the coldness of predators. At the center of the room sat the Emperor on a throne made of black crystal. Standing beside the throne was Princess Lyra Veltar, heir to the Empire and commander of their military forces. She was younger than Jake had expected, maybe his age, but she carried herself like a seasoned warrior. Her armor was different from the others, more elegant but obviously functional. A curved sword hung at her side, and her green eyes missed nothing as she studied the human delegation. "So these are the humans," she said, her voice carrying easily through the huge room. "The species that learned to fly between stars just yesterday and now thinks it deserves a seat at our table." Jake stepped forward and gave a formal bow. "Princess Lyra, Emperor Valdris honored members of the Zephyrian court. We come seeking friendship and mutual benefit. Humanity has much to offer the Galactic Council." Several nobles laughed, and Jake heard whispered comments about human arrogance. The Emperor leaned forward, his ancient face showing mild interest. "What could a young species possibly offer us? Your ships are barely functional. Your worlds are few. Your people have no understanding of real warfare." Before Jake could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Guards rushed into the throne room, and Jake saw energy blasts flashing outside the crystal windows. "Someone was attacking the palace. Rebels!" shouted one of the guards. "They've broken through the outer defenses!" Princess Lyra drew her sword and began giving orders to her troops. The nobles scattered in panic, but the Emperor remained calm on his throne. Jake noticed movement in the shadows above. Someone was positioning themselves for a shot at the princess. Without thinking, Jake threw himself forward, tackling Princess Lyra to the ground just as an energy blast scorched the air where she had been standing. He rolled, came up with his sidearm drawn, and put 3 shots into the assassin, hiding in the crystal formations above the throne. The attack lasted only minutes. Zephyrian security forces were efficient and deadly, and the rebels were quickly eliminated or captured. But the damage was done. Someone had nearly killed the princess in her own throne room, and only the quick action of a human had saved her life. Princess Lyra stood and brushed dust from her armor. She looked at Jake with new interest, and he could feel the entire throne room watching their interaction. "You saved my life," she said simply. "Just doing what felt right," Jake replied. "In my experience, letting royalty get shot is bad for diplomatic relations." A few nobles chuckled at that, and Jake saw the princess almost smile. Almost General Korax, the princess's military advisor, stepped forward. He was older than the others, with scars marking his pale skin and cold hatred in his eyes when he looked at Jake. "The human showed acceptable reflexes," he said grudgingly. "But reflexes are not strength. If humanity wishes to join the council, they must prove their worth in the traditional manner." Jake had studied Zephyrian customs, so he knew what was coming. Trial by combat was how they tested everything from business deals to marriage contracts. He had hoped humanity's technological contributions might be enough, but he should have known better. "We accept the challenge," Jake said before his advisors could object. The Emperor nodded slowly. "Very well. You will face our champions in combat. If you win, humanity gains council membership and our protection. If you lose," he shrugged. "Well, that will hardly matter to you." Princess Lyra stepped forward, and Jake could sense something important was about to happen. The throne room fell completely silent as she raised her voice for all to hear. "I propose to make this trial more interesting," she announced. Her green eyes locked with Jake's as she continued. "Win this battle, human, and you win me." The silence that followed was so complete that Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Win her? He stared at the princess, trying to understand what she had just offered. Around the throne room, nobles whispered frantically to each other. Even the Emperor looked surprised. Princess Lyra stood perfectly still, waiting for his response. Jake realized that somehow, in the space of a few minutes, the stakes had changed completely. This wasn't just about humanity joining the Galactic Council anymore. The future of two species now depended on whatever happened in the coming battle. Jake stared at Princess Lyra, his mind racing to understand what had just happened. Around the throne room, Zephyrian nobles whispered excitedly among themselves. The princess had just offered herself as the prize in a trial by combat, something that apparently had never happened before in their long history. "I need time to discuss this with my team," Jake said carefully. The Emperor nodded. "You have until tomorrow at dawn. The trial will take place on Cathara Prime, our sacred arena world. Choose your warriors wisely, human. You will need them." Back aboard the Starbound, Jake's senior staff gathered in the conference room. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone present. Lieutenant Amy Foster paced back and forth, her tablet full of notes about Zephyrian culture and combat traditions. "This is insane," said Chief Engineer Danny Walsh, shaking his head. "We came here for a simple diplomatic mission. Now we're supposed to fight for the princess's hand in marriage? What happens if we win? Do we suddenly become royalty?" Communications Officer Lisa Hart looked up from her research. "Actually, according to what I'm reading, if Jake wins, he doesn't just marry the princess. He becomes next in line for the throne of the entire Zephyrian Empire. That's hundreds of worlds and billions of people." Jake felt his stomach drop. "That can't be right." "It is," said Amy, looking at her tablet. "I've been talking to our cultural liaison, that Zephyrian scholar named Thane who was exiled for studying other species. He says the princess just made the most dangerous political move in Zephyrian history. Thane had requested permission to come aboard the Starbound, claiming he had important information. Jake had agreed to meet with him, hoping to understand what they were really getting into. The exiled Zephyrian was different from the others, older with kind eyes and simple clothes instead of armor. "Princess Lyra is brilliant," Thane explained as they sat in Jake's quarters, "but she's also desperate. The Zephyrian Empire is dying, though most of her people refuse to see it." "Dying how?" Jake asked. "We've become too rigid, too focused on the old ways. For 2,000 years, we've conquered and ruled through strength alone. But strength without growth is just slow decay. Our technology hasn't advanced in centuries. Our people follow the same patterns their ancestors did. We're becoming a museum of past glory." Thane leaned forward, his expression serious. "The princess believes that humanity could change that. She's studied your species since first contact, your adaptability, your innovation, your ability to find new solutions to old problems. These are exactly what the Zephyrian Empire needs. So she's gambling her entire future on whether I can win a fight." "Not just any fight," Thane corrected. "The trial on Cathara Prime isn't a simple duel. It's a complex series of military scenarios designed to test every aspect of leadership and combat skill. You'll face their best warriors in changing environments. Space battles, ground combat, urban warfare, survival scenarios. Most species that attempt it are destroyed in the first hour. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. How many humans can I bring? 12. You'll face 30 Zephyrian champions led by Captain Vex Murden, who has never lost a battle in 20 years of service. That night, Jake walked through the corridors of the Starbound, thinking about the impossible choice ahead of him. He found Princess Lyra waiting for him in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Somehow she had gotten aboard his ship without triggering any alarms. "How did you get past my security?" he asked. "I've been sneaking around ships since I was a child," she replied without turning around. "Your people are good, but they're not used to Zephyrian stealth technology." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Jake spoke. "Why did you do it? Why stake everything on a fight with someone you barely know?" Princess Lyra finally turned to face him. Up close, without the formal armor and ceremony, she looked younger and more tired than he had expected. "Because I've watched your species for 3 years, Jake Morrison. I've studied your history, your wars, your exploration of space. Do you know what impressed me most? Our weapons technology? Your ability to change." Her green eyes were intense as she continued. "When your people faced problems they couldn't solve with existing methods, they created new methods. When your enemies adapted to your tactics, you adapted faster. When you discovered faster-than-light travel, you didn't use it just for conquest. You used it for exploration and diplomacy. That doesn't mean I can win your trial." "No," she agreed. "But it means you'll approach it differently than any Zephyrian would. My people think strength comes from following proven methods. You humans seem to think strength comes from finding better methods." Jake studied her face, trying to understand her motivation. "And if I lose? Then I'll be executed for breaking tradition. My people will remain stuck in the past, and humanity will probably be denied council membership. Forever." She said it so calmly that it took Jake a moment to process the full horror of it. "That's a lot of pressure to put on one fight. No." Princess Lyra moved closer to him, and he could see genuine fear in her eyes despite her calm voice. "But I also know that sometimes you have to risk everything to save everything. My empire is dying, Jake. We're so focused on past glory that we can't see the future rushing toward us. Species we once dominated are developing new technologies while we polish our old weapons. Trade routes are shifting to bypass our territory. Young Zephyrians are leaving for other worlds where they can build something new instead of maintaining something old. And you think marrying a human will fix that? I think showing my people that strength can come from partnership instead of domination might fix that. But first you have to prove that human methods can succeed where Zephyrian methods would fail." Princess Lyra handed him a small crystal device. "This contains detailed information about Cathara Prime and the trial scenarios. Study it carefully. Is that allowed?" "Probably not. But following the rules exactly has never been humanity's strength, has it?" She moved toward the door, then paused. "Jake, when you face Captain Vex and his champions, remember this. Victory in battle isn't always about defeating your enemy." "What does that mean?" "You're human. You'll figure it out." After she left, Jake sat alone in the observation deck, holding the crystal device and staring out at the alien stars. Tomorrow he would select his team and travel to a world designed for combat. He would face the finest warriors of an ancient empire in a trial that had destroyed dozens of other species. But as he thought about Princess Lyra's words, Jake began to realize that maybe the real trial wasn't about proving human strength. Maybe it was about proving that there were different kinds of strength entirely. Cathara Prime looked like a planet-sized weapon floating in space. Jake stared at it through the transport ship's viewing screen as they approached the ancient arena world. The surface was covered with different environments: frozen wastelands, burning deserts, thick jungles, and metal cities. Each zone was designed to test warriors in different types of combat. "It's like someone took pieces from 100 different worlds and stuck them together," said Pete Rogers, the demolitions expert Jake had chosen for his team. Pete was a short, stocky man with steady hands and a talent for making things explode at exactly the right moment. "That's exactly what they did," replied Kate Sullivan, checking her sniper rifle for the 10th time. Kate was the best marksman on the Starbound, with red hair and green eyes that never missed details. "According to the files Princess Lyra gave us, they've been building this place for over 1,000 years. Jake had selected 12 people from his crew, each one chosen for specific skills. Along with Pete and Kate, he had brought Alex Chen, their best pilot, Maria Santos, a medic who had served in 3 wars, and 8 other specialists. They had trained together for weeks, but nothing could really prepare them for what waited below. "Remember the plan," Jake told his team as they prepared to land. "This isn't about proving we're the strongest fighters. It's about proving we can think differently than they expect." The Zephyrian viewing chamber floated high above the arena, protected by energy shields and filled with nobles who had come to watch the humans fail. Princess Lyra sat beside her father, the Emperor, while General Korak stood nearby with a satisfied expression on his scarred face. In a separate section, Jake could see the crew of the Starbound watching nervously. Captain Vex Murden and his 30 champions were already on the arena floor when Jake's team arrived. The Zephyrian warriors looked like living weapons, tall, graceful, and deadly, with armor that seemed to glow with inner light. Their leader was a head taller than Jake, with silver hair and cold blue eyes that had seen 1,000 victories. "So these are the humans who think they can challenge the Empire's finest," Captain Vex said, his voice carrying easily across the arena floor. "I have studied your species' military history. Crude weapons, simple tactics, no sense of honor in combat. This will not take long." The first scenario activated around them, and suddenly they were floating in space surrounded by asteroid fields and debris from old battles. Each team had access to small fighters and support ships. The objective was simple: control the central space station for 30 minutes. Jake watched as Captain Vex immediately deployed his forces in a classic Zephyrian formation, 3 groups of 10 fighters each, moving in perfect coordination toward the station. It was beautiful to watch, like a deadly dance performed by masters. "Alex, take your group and head for the station's rear docking bay," Jake ordered through his comm system. "Kate, Maria, find positions in the asteroid field for ambush shots. Everyone else follow me." Instead of matching the Zephyrians' formation, Jake split his smaller force into 4 groups that moved in seemingly random directions. To the watching nobles, it looked like chaos. Captain Vex smiled, thinking the humans were already panicking. But Jake wasn't panicking, he was adapting. While the Zephyrians moved toward the station in their perfect formation, the humans used the asteroid field itself as a weapon. Pete planted explosive charges on key asteroids, then detonated them to create debris clouds that blocked Zephyrian sensors. Kate picked off individual fighters from hidden positions, forcing the enemy to break their formation to hunt for her. Most importantly, while Captain Vex focused on the main battle, Alex's team quietly captured the space station from behind and began modifying its defenses. "Impossible," muttered General Korax as he watched the tactical display. The humans had taken control of the station in half the expected time, and they were using its weapons to support their scattered forces in ways the Zephyrians had never seen before. Captain Vex tried to adapt, but every time he moved his forces to counter one human tactic, Jake switched to something completely different. When the Zephyrians charged the station directly, they found it defended by a maze of debris and explosive traps. When they tried to use their superior firepower, the humans disappeared into the asteroid field like ghosts. The first scenario ended with the humans in complete control of the space station. In the viewing chamber, several Zephyrian nobles looked shocked. Captain Vex had never lost a scenario before, let alone lost it so completely. The second scenario was urban warfare, a maze of buildings, streets, and underground tunnels in a bombed-out city. This was supposed to be the Zephyrians' strongest area, where their superior weapons and armor would give them a clear advantage. Standard urban assault formation, Captain Vex ordered his forces. Clear the buildings one by one, maintain communication, watch for ambushes. But the humans didn't fight like any enemy the Zephyrians had faced before. Instead of trying to hold buildings or engage in direct combat, they turned the entire city into a psychological battlefield. Pete's explosives created fake attacks that drew Zephyrian forces into empty buildings. Kate's sniper shots came from impossible angles, making the enemy think they were surrounded by dozens of shooters. Most disturbing of all, the humans used the city's public address system to broadcast misleading information and fake orders in perfect Zephyrian language. Soon, different groups of Zephyrian warriors were receiving conflicting commands and becoming suspicious of each other. "They're fighting like terrorists, not warriors," complained one of the Zephyrian champions over the comm system. They're fighting to win, Princess Lyra said quietly from the viewing chamber. There's a difference. The urban scenario ended with most of Captain Vex's force scattered throughout the city, chasing ghosts while Jake's team completed their actual objective, capturing the city's command center. The humans had lost only one person to injuries, while the Zephyrians were exhausted and demoralized. In the viewing chamber, Emperor Valdris leaned forward with interest. These humans fight without honor, he observed. They fight without predictability, Princess Lyra corrected. Watch how they adapt to each new challenge instead of trying to force their way through it. The third scenario was individual combat in a jungle environment. This should have been the Zephyrians' easiest victory. Their warriors were stronger, faster, and better armed than the humans. But once again, Jake's people refused to fight the expected battle. Instead of engaging in direct combat, they used the jungle itself as an ally. They set traps using local plants and animals. They created false camps to confuse the enemy. Most importantly, they worked together in ways that the individualistic Zephyrian warriors couldn't counter. When a Zephyrian warrior cornered Maria Santos near a cliff, she didn't try to outfight him. She used her comm to call for Pete, who triggered an explosive that brought down a tree between them. While the warrior was distracted, Kate put a tranquilizer dart in his neck from 300 yards away. Cowardly, spat General Korax. Effective, said Princess Lyra. By the end of the jungle scenario, Jake's team had captured or neutralized 25 of the 30 Zephyrian champions. Captain Vex found himself alone, surrounded, and facing an impossible choice. That was when Jake made his most surprising move yet. Instead of simply declaring victory, he walked into the jungle clearing where Captain Vex waited and dismissed his own team. Just you and me, Jake called out. One final fight to settle this. Captain Vex drew his energy sword, confusion clear on his face. Why, you have already won. Your people have proven their worth in combat. Have we? Jake asked, drawing his own weapon, a simple metal blade that looked primitive compared to the Zephyrian's glowing sword. Or have we just proven we can be sneaky and unpredictable? Maybe it's time to prove something else. In the viewing chamber, Princess Lyra sat forward, finally understanding what Jake was planning. Around her, the Zephyrian nobles murmured with interest. This was the kind of combat they understood. Honor, individual skill, warrior facing warrior. Captain Vex smiled for the first time since the trials began. Now you fight like a true warrior, human. Let us see if you can match your tactics with actual skill. The two fighters circled each other in the jungle clearing, while thousands watched from above. Jake knew he was probably going to lose this fight. Captain Vex was faster, stronger, and had been training with weapons since childhood. But sometimes losing the right way was more important than winning the wrong way. The duel began, and Jake immediately realized he was outmatched. Captain Vex's energy sword moved like lightning, cutting through the air with precision that Jake could barely follow. Within seconds, Jake was bleeding from 3 small wounds and barely staying alive. But as the fight continued, Jake began to notice something. Captain Vex was fighting exactly the way a Zephyrian warrior was supposed to fight. Perfect technique, classical forms, moves that had been used for centuries. It was beautiful and deadly, but it was also predictable. Jake stopped trying to match the Zephyrian's technique and started fighting like a human, dirty, unpredictable, and desperate. He threw dirt in Vex's eyes, used his injured arm as a distraction, and fought with the wild creativity of someone who refused to give up. Jake fought desperately against Captain Vex, his metal blade ringing against the Zephyrian's energy sword. Blood ran down his arm from several cuts, and he could feel his strength fading. The Zephyrian warrior was simply better, faster, stronger, and trained from childhood in the art of combat. But as Jake stumbled backward, avoiding another lethal swing, he noticed something important. Every move Captain Vex made was perfect, classical, and exactly what Jake expected. The Zephyrian was fighting like a textbook come to life, using techniques that had been perfected over centuries. Jake stopped trying to match that perfection. Instead, he started fighting like what he was, a human who refused to quit. When Captain Vex came at him with a high overhead strike, Jake didn't try to block it properly. Instead, he dove to the side, rolled through the dirt, and came up swinging at the Zephyrian's legs. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. Fight with honor, Captain Vex demanded, stepping back to avoid Jake's wild attack. I'm fighting to win, Jake replied, wiping blood from his mouth. Sometimes those are different things. The crowd in the viewing chamber was murmuring with confusion. This wasn't how combat was supposed to work. Warriors were meant to display skill and technique, not roll around in the dirt like animals. General Corax looked disgusted, but Princess Lyra was leaning forward with intense interest. Jake could see the pattern now. Captain Vex expected him to fight with Zephyrian rules. Elegant, honorable, predictable. Every time Jake did something unexpected, the warrior hesitated for just a moment, trying to figure out how to respond with proper technique. Those moments were all Jake needed. He feinted left, then threw his knife at Vex's sword arm. Not to injure, just to distract. While the Zephyrian deflected the blade with perfect form, Jake tackled him around the waist and they both went down hard. They wrestled in the dirt and, for a few seconds, Jake's human desperation matched the Zephyrian's superior strength. Then Vex got his feet under him and threw Jake across the clearing. Jake hit a tree and slid to the ground, gasping for breath. Captain Vex stood and retrieved his sword, his armor scratched, but his fighting spirit clearly intact. You fight well for a human, but this ends now. Jake forced himself to his feet, swaying slightly. He was hurt, tired, and outmatched. In a fair fight, he would lose in the next few seconds. But Jake Morrison hadn't survived 3 colonial wars by fighting fair. As Captain Vex raised his energy, sword for the final strike, Jake did something completely unexpected. He dropped his weapon and raised his hands. I yield, he said clearly. The entire arena fell silent. In the viewing chamber, General Corax smiled with satisfaction while Princess Lyra's face went pale. Had Jake just given up? Had he thrown away humanity's only chance at joining the Galactic Council? Captain Vex stopped mid-swing, confusion clear on his face. You surrender? I yield this fight, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's speakers. But I don't surrender the trial. What does that mean? Captain Vex demanded. Jake looked up at the viewing chamber where thousands of Zephyrians watched. It means I choose to change the rules. This trial was supposed to test whether humans deserve to join your civilization. But maybe the real question is whether your civilization is ready to accept what humans have to offer. Explain yourself, came the Emperor's voice from the speakers above. Jake stood straighter, ignoring his injuries. Captain Vex is a better warrior than me. In single combat, he wins every time. But look what happened in the other scenarios. My people didn't win because we were stronger or faster or better with weapons. We won because we thought differently. You won through tricks and deception. General Corax's voice boomed across the arena. There is no honor in such methods. There's no honor in losing when you could have won, Jake replied. Captain Vex, you're an excellent warrior, but answer me this, in 2,000 years of Zephyrian combat, how many times has an enemy yielded in single combat and then kept fighting? Captain Vex thought for a moment. Never. Yielding means defeat. Exactly. Because your people follow the rules, even when the rules don't work anymore. That's why your empire is struggling. You're so focused on doing things the honorable way that you can't adapt when the situation changes. Jake turned to address the viewing chamber directly. Princess Lyra offered herself as the prize for this trial. She did it because she knows her empire needs to change. You have incredible technology, powerful weapons, and brave warriors. But you're losing ground to species that innovate faster than you do. And you think humans can teach us innovation? The Emperor asked. I think humans can show you that innovation and honor aren't opposites, Jake replied. Watch. Jake walked over to where Captain Vex stood, the Zephyrian sword still raised and ready. Captain, you won this fight. By your rules, by any reasonable measure, you're the better warrior. I'm not challenging that. Then what are you doing? I'm offering you something new. A different kind of victory. Jake extended his hand. Instead of defeating me, work with me. Instead of proving you're stronger, prove you're smarter. Help me show your people that strength comes from cooperation, not just domination. Captain Vex stared at the offered hand. Around the arena, thousands of Zephyrians waited to see what would happen. This had never occurred before in their long history. A yielded opponent was asking for partnership instead of accepting defeat. "This is ridiculous," General Corax announced. "The human is lost. The trial is over." "Is it?" Princess Lyra's voice cut through the arena. She stood in the royal viewing box, her green eyes fixed on Jake. "The trial was to determine if humans deserve to join our civilization. But what if the real test is whether our civilization deserves to include humans?" "Explain," her father commanded. "Look at what happened today," Princess Lyra said, her voice carrying to every corner of the arena. "In space combat, the humans used creativity and adaptability to defeat superior forces. In urban warfare, they used psychology and unconventional tactics to achieve victory with minimal casualties. In individual combat, they demonstrated that knowing when to yield can be more valuable than knowing how to win." She paused, looking directly at Captain Vex. "And now, instead of claiming victory over a defeated opponent, they're offering partnership. They're showing us that the strongest choice isn't always the most obvious one." Captain Vex looked at Jake's extended hand, then at his energy sword, then back at Jake's battered but determined face. "You could have kept fighting," he said quietly. "Yes. And I would have lost." "So you chose to lose?" "I chose to change what losing meant." Jake kept his hand extended. "Captain, you've won 100 battles. But have you ever won a war by making your enemy into an ally?" The arena was completely silent. In the royal viewing box, the Emperor leaned forward, studying the scene below with ancient eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. General Corax looked furious, but Princess Lyra was smiling. Captain Vex slowly lowered his sword. "In all my years of combat, no defeated opponent has ever offered me partnership. Then maybe it's time to try something new." Captain Vex reached out and grasped Jake's hand. The moment their hands touched, something changed in the arena. The watching Zephyrians began to murmur among themselves, not with confusion, but with interest. Here was something they had never seen before. Victory through cooperation instead of domination. "The human speaks truth," Captain Vex announced, his voice carrying clearly through the arena. "I have defeated him in single combat, but he has taught me something new about what defeat and victory can mean." General Corax stepped forward in the viewing box. "This is meaningless sentiment. The trial is clear. The humans have failed the final test." "Have they?" Princess Lyra asked. She looked at her father, the Emperor who had ruled the Zephyrian people for over a century. "Father, what do you think?" Emperor Valdris stood slowly, his ancient frame commanding attention from every person in the arena. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "General Corax believes the humans have failed because they could not defeat our champion in honorable combat. But I wonder, have they succeeded by showing us a different kind of honor entirely?" The Emperor looked down at Jake and Captain Vex, still standing together in the arena floor. "Tell me, human, what happens now? You have yielded in combat but claim victory in the trial. You have lost the fight but gained my daughter's champion as an ally. What is your next move?" Jake looked up at the royal viewing box, then at the thousands of Zephyrian nobles watching him. His next words would determine not just his own fate, but the future relationship between two species. "Your Majesty," Jake said, his voice steady despite his injuries, "I propose we stop playing by the old rules entirely." Jake stood in the center of the arena, Captain Vex beside him, looking up at thousands of Zephyrian nobles who had never seen anything like what had just happened. His body ached from the fight, but his mind was clear. Everything depended on the next few minutes. "Your Majesty," Jake continued, "this trial was supposed to prove whether humans deserve to join Zephyrian civilization. But I think we've been asking the wrong question." Emperor Valdris leaned forward. "What question should we be asking? Whether Zephyrian and human civilizations can build something better together than either could build alone." Jake gestured to Captain Vex. "Your champion defeated me in single combat because he's stronger and more skilled. But we accomplished more by working together than we did by fighting each other." "Pretty words," General Corax interrupted from the viewing box. "But you still lost the final trial. By our laws, that means your laws," Jake said firmly, "are exactly the problem. A shocked murmur ran through the crowd. No one spoke to Zephyrian military leaders that way, especially not defeated humans. But Jake pressed on. For 2,000 years, you've conquered species through military strength. You've built an empire based on the idea that the strongest should rule, and it worked for a while. But now you're facing challenges that can't be solved just by being stronger than everyone else. Jake began walking slowly around the arena floor, his voice carrying to every corner through the speakers. Trade routes are shifting away from your territory. Younger species are developing technologies you don't understand. Your own people are leaving for worlds where they can innovate instead of just following tradition. How dare you? General Korak started. He dares because he's right. Princess Lyra interrupted, standing up in the royal viewing box. Everything he just said is true. We've been so focused on maintaining our strength that we've forgotten how to grow. She looked at her father, then at the assembled nobles. 3 years ago, when we first learned about humans, I started studying their history. Do you know what I found? They've faced extinction dozens of times. Ice ages, diseases, wars that should have destroyed them completely. But they survived because they adapted. Adaptation is not strength, General Korax protested, isn't it? Jake called out. Captain Vex, in your 20 years of combat, how many enemies have you faced who fought exactly the same way? All of them, Captain Vex replied thoughtfully. Every species we've conquered eventually learned to fight like us. They adopted our weapons, our formations, our tactics. And how did that work out for them? Captain Vex was quiet for a moment. They all lost. Because they could only copy what we already did better. Exactly. But my people didn't try to fight like Zephyrians. We fought like humans, unpredictable, adaptive, creative. And for the first time in your military career, you lost 3 scenarios in a row. Jake turned back to the royal viewing box. Your Majesty, Princess Lyra didn't offer herself as a prize because she thought I was the strongest human. She did it because she believed humans could offer your empire something it needs, the ability to change. The Emperor stood slowly, his ancient eyes fixed on Jake. And what do you propose, human? That we abandon 2,000 years of tradition? I propose that you build on it, Jake replied. Your people have incredible discipline, advanced technology, and a strong sense of honor. Those are valuable things. But combine them with human creativity and adaptability, and you could have something unprecedented, an empire that grows stronger through cooperation instead of conquest. And how would this work practically? The Emperor asked. Jake looked at Princess Lyra, who gave him an encouraging nod. Start with the marriage offer your daughter made. Not as a prize for winning a fight, but as a symbol of partnership between species. Let it show your people that strength can come from unity instead of domination. You would marry our princess? General Korax demanded. Only if she agrees, Jake said, looking up at Princess Lyra. Not because I won her in combat, but because we choose to build something together, a union that represents cooperation between humans and Zephyrians. Princess Lyra stood and walked to the edge of the viewing platform. And what exactly would we be building? Jake smiled despite his injuries. A new kind of empire. One where conquered worlds become partner worlds. Where different species contribute their best ideas instead of just following Zephyrian methods. Where strength is measured by what you can create, not just what you can destroy. Impossible, General Korak said. Our people would never accept such changes. Your people are already accepting them, Captain Vex said suddenly. Everyone in the arena turned to look at the Zephyrian champion. Did you not see what happened today? The humans showed us tactics we had never encountered. They made us think about combat in new ways. Even in defeat, they taught us something valuable. Captain Vex looked around the arena, addressing the thousands of nobles watching. I have served this empire for 20 years. I have won every battle, defeated every challenger, followed every tradition, and in all that time I learned nothing new. He paused. Today, in losing to these humans, I learned more about warfare than in all my previous victories combined. A ripple of conversation went through the crowd. This was Captain Vex Murden, the Empire's greatest warrior, admitting that defeat had taught him something victory never could. Princess Lyra seized the moment. This is exactly what our empire needs, she announced. Not the ability to defeat our enemies, but the ability to learn from them. Not the power to conquer other species, but the wisdom to grow alongside them. She looked directly at Jake. I accept your proposal, Jake Morrison, not as a defeated prize, but as an equal partner in building something new. The arena erupted in conversation, as nobles debated this unprecedented development. Some looked shocked, others intrigued, and a few appeared angry. But Jake noticed that most of them looked interested, as if they had been waiting for someone to suggest that change was possible. Emperor Valdris raised his hand for silence. When the arena was quiet, he spoke carefully. "This is not a decision I can make alone. The marriage of my heir affects the entire empire." "Then let the empire decide," Princess Lyra said boldly. "Call for a vote of the High Council. Let our people choose whether they want to continue down the old path or try something new." "And if they choose the old path?" the Emperor asked. "Then humanity will respectfully accept council membership through traditional means," Jake replied. "We'll prove ourselves worthy through whatever trials you set, and we'll honor your customs. But if they choose partnership..." He looked at Princess Lyra, then at Captain Vex, then at the thousands of watching nobles. "If they choose partnership, we'll show you what humans and Zephyrians can accomplish together." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, studying Jake and his daughter. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. In 3 days, the High Council will vote on this proposal. If they approve, we will proceed with this experiment in cooperation. If not, humanity will face the standard trials for council membership." "And the humans who fought today?" General Korax asked. "Will be honored guests until the vote is complete," the Emperor declared. He looked down at Jake. "You have given us much to think about, human. I hope for all our sakes that you are right about the benefits of change." As Jake and his team were escorted from the arena, Princess Lyra approached him. "You realize what you've started?" she asked quietly. "A revolution?" "A evolution," she corrected. "The question is whether my people are ready for it." Jake looked back at the arena where Zephyrian nobles were still debating animatedly among themselves. 3 days from now we'll find out. And if they vote no?" Jake smiled. "Then we'll prove humans are worth accepting the hard way. But somehow I don't think that's going to be necessary." Princess Lyra followed his gaze to where Captain Vex was explaining human tactics to a group of younger Zephyrian warriors, all of them listening with intense interest. "You may be right," she said. "Change has a way of spreading once it starts." 3 days later, the High Council voted. It wasn't close. The future of 2 species would be built not on conquest but on cooperation. And Jake Morrison, who had lost a fight but won a revolution, prepared to help build an empire unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The wedding of Princess Lyra Veltar and Commander Jake Morrison became the foundation of the first truly cooperative interstellar civilization, one where strength came not from defeating your enemies, but from making them into friends.